Amarin, a legendary warrior who hates everything she's become, desperately wants her existence to end. But there's one problem with that. She's immortal. She's also made a terrible mistake, having given away the secrets of her immortality to Valise Kor, a powerful mage capable of twisting that magic into something monstrous. Now, Valise has kidnapped Rigith, Amarin's creator, and stolen the magical stone called the Gate, the key to everything immortal. Determined to right her wrongs, Amarin enters into an uneasy partnership with the King's son. Together, Amarin and Jael risk everything to rescue both the mage and the stone. If their rescue fails, Vanelise will have the power to create a league of immortal warriors just like Amarin. With that power secured, the wars between kingdoms will never end, and if the wars continue, Amarin loses the ending she seeks. Though, now that she's gotten close to Prince Jael, she doesn't know if that's a bad thing after all. I had the honor to read The Gate by Brandi Schonberg for my very first ARC review. And man, I am stoked that this was my very first book ever to read. A, it was a book in our Indie Author Showcase, and B, it made me be able to kind of really dive deeper into reviews and pay attention a little bit more of what I like as a reader. And so this is a really cool experience overall of what this book was about. And so I'm excited to talk about it. And you know, I got this copy for free just for an honest review. So I'm going to give you how I think. We're going to talk about some positives, and then of course I'm going to talk about a little bit of things I felt could have been better, and then I'll give you an overall rating of the book in general. But I hope that at least if you get a takeaway, that you'll have a takeaway of, is this book good for you? Is this something that you would enjoy? And so this book follows the main character named Amarin. Amarin is an immortal warrior for the kingdom of Kar, I guess you could say, and it's cool. Like, you're following an immortal. That's right. Someone who's invincible, someone who's invulnerable, someone who gets hurt and then things heal. And we start off with a really cool scene explaining kind of what it looks like. She has many scars on her face, and they kind of have like silver behind the background. And so it's kind of like this weird ethereal, like glowing type thing that creates quite a bit of mystery of what's going on with this character. And you know, Amarin, she's been living a long life, being like top warrior essentially, and she's just ready to go. She's trying to find a way out to end her existence. And it brings a really interesting element to the main character that you have. Like, she's ready to go, and so she's ruthless. She's someone who just takes big risks and doesn't really care about what's going to happen to her. And that's a really cool character to get to behind. She is awesome. And so right off the gate, this book really hooks you with the character and also hooks you with the question of immortality and where that comes from. Because very, very quickly, you have Amarin be able to return to the kingdom of where she came, and you then learn more about where this immortal came from. But just to kind of give you a grasp, I put this in my Goodreads review, just to kind of get you a grasp of what type of Amarin, like what type of character Amarin is and what type of POV you're having. She's really, there's a part where she is with the prince of the kingdom, and pretty much she's like, I gotta go do this thing on my own. And he's like, no, I'll go with you. Like, I can wear this armor that's obviously a guy's armor, and it will be more believable. And so she just does this. She wrapped her braid around her hand, reached up with a dagger, and sliced. Just to be like, well, F you, you know, I'm just gonna do it myself, and I don't need no man. And you're like, yeah, cool, Amarin. Snaps all around, you know, like, that's awesome. And so you follow this really cool woman character throughout the whole story. Once we get to the kingdom, and once we kind of get the main story, you run into the mage that kind of created her, and Rigoloth or whatever. We hear it in the intro or in the synopsis of it, but pretty much these immortals came from this portal that they call the Gate. The whole story is called the Gate, and they come from this thing called the Gate, and pretty much it seems like a mage goes in and brings someone out, and they're immortal, and they're trained essentially to be these like immortal soldiers for the king. That is so interesting, right? There is a lot to go on into this story about that, and it makes you think so much. Like, I really enjoy the mystery behind where these people come from, and that's just kind of what held my intrigue the entire time this book was going on. I found myself intrigued the entire time of, the story of the Immortals. I want to know more about them. You learn a lot about Amren, but you run into other people too that are part of the army that make it fascinating, and you get multiple points of view as well. I think what Brandi does really, really well is you follow probably a cast of 4 characters' point of views the most. That's Amren, and then you follow the prince, whose name is Jael, and you have Regalith is the mage that, you know, brought Amren out of the gate, and then you also follow someone by the name of Mia, or Maya, and she's kind of more of a dock worker, deckhand that meets Regalith after he, you know, gets captured a little bit. And so you have these great points of view, and the thing I really liked about what Brandi did is you would see an instance where Amren would be running in essentially and doing something, and you're seeing her point of view. But then the next little part of that chapter would be Jael's point of view, and you would see Amren run in from his perspective and see what she does, and the story continues where it almost is like happening at the same time, and you get to kind of see another outlook of the scenario, what's going on and what each character thinks as that's happening. And I think that's really unique and cool. I really enjoyed having it not like, oh, now this perspective continues the story. It's more like you're seeing the same event in this chapter from different perspectives, and I found it really compelling and cool and really unique. And the journey was great. I really enjoyed seeing where they end up. Are they able to stop these people from creating an immortal army? What's going on with Regalith and his power? What's going on with Jael as he learns who he is as a prince? What's going on with Amren as she continues to be into depression and not really caring about her life? What happens to Mia as this small orphan girl, and she learns more about her history as she runs into these magical people and also these like villains as well. It's really cool concept and a really awesome story with an overarching mystery of where are these immortals coming from? And it's something unique that I haven't seen done before that I really liked. Now, if there is a book out there that's like, hey, there's magic portals and immortals and they're here and this is their story, let me know in the comments. That'd be amazing to read. But for me, this is the first time I've witnessed something like that. I don't know, I picture like Stargate, essentially. And the gate, I haven't watched Stargate, so this is my mind. There's like a Stargate portal, and there's like people that walk through, and these ones were dragged through and don't have memory and are immortal, and it's cool. Like, I just think that overarching story is just incredible. I think the storytelling's great. I think it's a lot of fun and a cool story, and there's a little bit of, you know, between Amren and Jael, there's like this weird romance going on. And I say weird because it's very fast. Like all of a sudden they're just like into each other, and that's fine. And it doesn't get like spicy. This is like kind of a slow burn while being fast, if that makes sense. Like they just kind of get into each other. Man, get into each other sounds bad. They just kind of connect for some reason, and that gets explained as well. But it's interesting. There's like a little bit of romance. There's a little bit of where that story goes as well. And yeah, it ends on a really unique note because as a reader, I still want to know about the gate. And also, all these movies and things we watch, when there's like somebody that has an immortal army, they're usually the bad guy. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if we are reading a book at the perspective of bad guys. Like that's kind of the thought I had near the end, was like, am I reading the villains side of the stories because this other kingdom is wanting to do that? And yeah, they seem bad as well because they want to have an immortal army too, but are they just doing that to overcome? So I'm curious if there's going to be things later on in the series, because this is the first book of a series that will include that. And so that's all positive stuff. If that sounds really cool, then I think you're going to really enjoy this book, because I thoroughly enjoyed the concept and the fantasy of this. Now, that all being said, there are some things that prevent me from saying this is like the greatest beginning of a series of all time. This is like the second one I've read in the few months of like an indie book, and I think it's kind of just something that happens with newer authors or indie authors. Is I do feel that everyone has a kind of a faster pace. The pacing seems very fast. Sometimes things don't feel epic in a way, and I don't know if that's just me. They just kind of feel like they don't let you sit in some information to then bring back later. For example, this is a part of the story where Jael is walking into the enemy territory, essentially. And he says he meets this person for the first time who's leading him to like this chamber for him to kind of just be chilling. right? So he's in the villain territory. He's not really a prisoner, but they're not going to like let him leave either. And so they're taking him to this nicer chamber for a prince. And so this person that's leading him, this is the thought that Jael has of them. He says, a pearl of odd, unnerving wisdom glinting in the small man's eyes led Jael to wonder whether his loyalties truly lay with Lors. Lors is the bad guy, one of the bad guys. What that tells me is all of a sudden the internal thought of Jael was wondering whether this person's loyalties truly laid with the villain. It, as a reader, immediately tells me this guy's going to switch sides. Like, it's like, cool, so this guy's on our side and he's going to help the prince, which he does. I don't feel like that's too spoilery because it's obvious for you. I think the wording could be totally different and that part wasn't necessary in the sentence. I think what happens a lot, especially with newer writers, and I'm guilty of this being someone who writes a lot for Dungeons and Dragons, is I don't trust my players or my people to use a brain for some reason. We want to make sure we set it up perfectly, and so we write out, this happens, and I hope you notice it, because then it will provide information of why this happens. Well, I think you can write things differently and be able to create like a shock factor. Like if it was like, the pearl of odd unnerving wisdom glinting in the small man's eyes was something of fascination, Jael was thinking, you know, but it wasn't necessarily telling you like it could be on a different side. Then when the turn happens, you're like, oh man, this guy's on our side. It provides a little bit more shock factor because we tend to want to over explain things because we don't think the reader for me, my players are like smart enough. And then kind of like, yeah, we saw that from a mile away, and it ends up being anticlimactic. And it happens a few times in this book. And I'm not saying that as negative. I still think the scenes are very cool and it makes the story be able to progress. However, it can just be kind of a bummer because the potential I saw, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, like I could have saw this be a huge moment and I would pop off and just give me more, right? Like it just gives you that little bit of dopamine rush of like, oh, please continue. Like that was awesome. Just watch out for those. If you're watching this, you know, I know that's just unsolicited advice from a reviewer, but I felt like there was at least 2 to 3 moments, not going to go through them all, that I felt like you undermined cool reveals that would happen later. And that's why this book, for me, was awesome, but also fell short in some ways because it also was very predictable because I was being fed information so early. So there you go. That's my big gripe, I guess. But other than that, the story is incredible and great, and I enjoyed it. And it's very unique storytelling, and I just loved the way that the Immortals and the Gate happened. Like, there's a part in here that I also quoted. It reminds me of a movie, and I'll put the clip right afterwards. It's Jael shows up and he's looking for Amren, and he goes, "Where?" Jael took a step forward. "Is," and another, his voice stronger, "She!" He was shouting now, and so it just made me think of Batman and be like, "Where is she?" It's so funny. I love it. It was good. I enjoyed some of the camp of those characters, but also just the storytelling was so good. If I was to compare this book to another book series, it reminds me a lot, like the knightery and the fighting reminds me a lot of Alana. And so Tamora Pierce's The Lioness Rampart Quartet, like Amren's just so cool and badass, I guess you could say, and so is Alana. And so you have a very good comparison with them, except just make Alana immortal, a little bit sad, and just include some gore in there or some blood and stuff, because there's a lot of involvement with the immortality and just like blood. So what do I think? Well, I think this is a great beginning because I still have so many questions of what this gate is, where the Immortals are coming from, where the story is going to go. There's some characters that are introduced here that you get a little bit glimpse of and then they kind of disappear, and so I think they're going to come into play. I was able to read the first chapter. It has like the next chapter from the next book, and I'm excited from the point of view you get in that book of what could happen, because it was kind of not what I was expecting to get immediately from my point of view. And so I'm excited to get to the second book. So I think this is a great solid start to the series. I think that it's a great first, book for independent author, and of course your writing is going to get better. So Brandi, hats off to you. You created an awesome story. Continue, and it's going to be even more polished. And I'm excited to read the second book. And so I gave this 4 stars out of 5 stars. I think it was great, and I think if those little tweaks happened, it could have potentially been a 4.5 or a 5-star book for me. So you can order The Gate, the Immortal Coil Saga, Book 1 by Brandi Schonberg today on Kindle. You can also read it on Kindle Unlimited if you have that, but also there will be paperback on the Amazon website as well. I will have all of that linked in the description. I also will have a link to the author's actual website because they are giving away signed editions of the book with some extra fun stuff in like a box, and so you can go get a signed copy of it if you wanted to and be able to read it there as well. I recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and you know, it's a good fantasy novel. It does read a little YA-y because I compared it to Tamora Pierce, I guess you could say, but it's good, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well because, you know, I really like the difference of what this is. Immortality is really, really cool. We have a lot of immortal stories going on right now, but this one was just kind of more like, you are brute and go get stabbed and do all that stuff and you'll live and, you know, whatever. And there's just, it's so mysterious of wanting to do that. So I'm excited for the next book. Thanks again, Brandi, for giving me an advanced reader copy, and I hope you guys enjoy. I will talk to you guys next time. Toodles.